By October 1974, 28-year-old Karen Silkwood was feeling deeply betrayed by her employer, Kerr McGee. She had learned for the first time that handling plutonium could cause cancer.
Kerr McGee had a responsibility to tell its workers, this is what you're working with, this is what is known about the risk, and here's how to protect yourself. Those three things were never done.
Within weeks, the union called a meeting at which medical experts explained the hazards of plutonium exposure. At the meeting, which was audiotaped, an indignant Karen Silkwood spoke up.
If there is something going on, and if we are going to be susceptible to cancer, we're not going to know about it in 20 years. There's something's got to be done.
Silkwood also believes someone was tampering with quality control records at the plant. Union officials enlisted her to prove it. She began secretly collecting information, jotting down these notes, and stealing company documents.
Karen was like a foot soldier, working for the union, who was sent behind enemy lines to gather intelligence.
The union planned to leak the evidence to New York Times reporter David Burnham.
I had this general feeling that this was, this industry was very soft and had been puffed up way out of perspective. So I was looking for chinks in the armor. And she offered a possible chink.
For Karen, however, this fight was personal. She was concerned about herself and her fellow workers. On October 7, 1974, she called Steve Wadka, her union contact in Washington, who taped their conversation.
In the laboratory, we've got 18 and 19-year-old boys, and 20 and 21. And they didn't have the schooling, so they don't understand what radiation is. They don't understand, Steve.
Silkwood feared that faulty fuel rods were being shipped out for use in a nuclear reactor. Although she was told to be discreet, her actions put her in jeopardy.
It was a major federal offense to steal anything out of a nuclear facility. And that's what she was doing. She was pilfering documents. So she had good reason to be fearful if she were caught.
The stress of Silkwood's 2 months of detective work began to take its toll. She dropped from 115 to 94 pounds and relied on sedatives to get her through the day. Sensing disaster, she asked her family in Texas to find her some job applications.
I think that Bill, Karen's father, knew instinctively that she was frightened and that she felt, there was something she had to do and that it was dangerous. And he simply told her to do what she thought was right.
She was going to give him a 2-week notice and come home. She wasn't going to stay with Kerr McGee.
But before that could happen, Silkwood made a terrifying discovery. Plutonium was missing from the Kerr McGee plant. Unnerved, she called a former co-worker.
She did call me one night, and her biggest concern was material unaccounted for, that Kerr McGee was not keeping complete inventory of how much plutonium they had and where it was.
Over 40 pounds of weapons-grade plutonium were missing, enough to make 3 nuclear bombs.
She was distraught, very emotional, as though I'm concerned it's real, but other people don't seem to care.
Then, on November 5th, at the end of her shift, Karen routinely waved her hands before the radiation meter. She came face to face with what she dreaded most: contamination.
She would find that she had contamination on her hands, which were in glove boxes, either meaning the gloves leaked or someone put plutonium inside the gloves.
Karen was forced to endure a painful shower with powdered detergent and bleach to remove the deadly plutonium. She returned to the plant the next day. After working in the lab for about an hour, She waved her hands in front of the radiation meter. This time, it was more serious.
They scrubbed the skin raw all over her body. It hurt so much that Drew would tell her not to cry because the salt from her tears, burned her skin. They had to scrub every orifice. I mean, it was just nightmarish what she went through.
Silkwood's nightmare wasn't over. When she returned to work the next morning on November 7th, her contamination was higher than ever. But she had not been working with plutonium since the day before, so the only explanation was that somehow Karen had been exposed to plutonium outside the plant.
Her nasal smears were indicating that she had inhaled plutonium. She knew at that point what that meant. She knew it was a death sentence.
The company health supervisor suspected that Silkwood had contaminated herself to embarrass Kerr McGee. Once again, she submitted to an intense scrubbing. Karen then agreed to an inspection of her car and the apartment that she shared with a roommate. The car was clean, but her apartment was hot or radioactive.
They found out that her bathroom was incredibly hot. The commode was hot. The sink was hot. There's a trail of the refrigerator that was hot. The refrigerator was hot.
Men in protective suits, a Kerr McGee decontamination team descended on Silkwood's apartment.
I was called and told to organize a decontamination squad to go down and start cleaning the apartment. When I got down there, they were still loading stuff in barrels. Everything went. The refrigerator, the couch, coffee tables, the television set. Just cleaned it out. Left nothing. She was down there, standing out front bawling, and then she disappeared. I don't know where she went.
Karen frantically called her union contact and her family.
We were concerned at that point as to what was going to happen to her. In other words, did she have enough at that point in time to immediately kill her?
I answered the phone, and she was in tears. All she could say was, I'll be home soon.
Then she drove to Oklahoma City to see her boyfriend.
And she showed up down here, and she was shaking like a leaf, and she was hysterical. She was incoherent, and she kept saying over and over again that I'm going to die.
Silkwood now believed the company would do anything to stop her. Fearing for her safety, union officials quickly arranged for her to meet with Times reporter David Burnham. But before Karen could meet with the reporter, officials from the Atomic Energy Commission and company doctors insisted that she, Drew, and her roommate be examined at the Center for Nuclear Research in Los Alamos, New Mexico. On November 12th, her friends were told they were clean, but Silkwood learned that she had somehow ingested plutonium. Doctors insisted her radiation levels fell within governmental safety standards and she would be fine. Karen didn't believe them. She was even afraid that kissing Drew would contaminate him.
I remember answering the phone, and it was her, and she was upset. She had all these tests done, and they had told her that she was married to cancer.
She found out that she was contaminated. Just all of a sudden, 3 cards showed up in the mail for the kids, belated birthday cards. They hadn't heard from her in about 7 or 8 months.
Still, Karen did not visit her children. Instead, she promised union officials that she would complete her mission.
She came back to Oklahoma, and we asked her if she still wanted to proceed with the collection of all the quality control information. She said yes.
Karen Silkwood was supposed to deliver those materials the next day, November 13th, to the reporter from the New York Times. She never made it.